I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Reflect on their personal commitments on page 18 is where we are going to begin tonight. And it's of the companion workbook, Promises to Feel, Pause, and Heal Without Shame. So that's going to be our goal tonight. We also have with our panel, we have our special guest, Dr. Carolyn Stevens. She shares her clinical insight into why so many of us struggle with permitting ourselves to feel and what happens when we finally do. She also offers a robust practical tool. Now, you got to get that toolkit to help you begin honoring your emotional commitments in everyday life. So let's take a moment to reflect on the commitment that I hope we all made. I know I did on page 18 of the workbook. So I'm going to tell you about me, just so some of you can catch up and some of our listeners can get a little idea of what we're talking about. So for me, I committed to, which was kind of hard, stop silencing my pain to keep the peace. I've been learning to give myself grace and to pour into myself, especially during the hard times. I often move through pain quickly or overcome it in other ways, but I do cover it up with productivity. I keep myself very busy. But this time, I permitted myself to slow down just a little bit, to acknowledge my emotions, which I needed this week. Somebody asked me earlier, how was my week? So I definitely needed to acknowledge my emotions and make space to truly heal fully. So to us, what was the commitment you made to yourself? Anyone can chime in. I am dying to hear. What was a commitment that you made to yourself? Doesn't have to be something big.
To be more intentional.
I can go. Hey, everybody.
So
Thanks for
VG,
having
you
us
saying
again, Black. Uh,
thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. We are here with the intentional leader, Coach Rachel. We have author Shayna Jenkins, BG Howard, and of course the beautiful Dr. Carolyn Stevens. So we may have some others that may pop in. There's a lot of technical difficulty with where people are. We're all in different states and the weather it's horrible. But we will accept our panel anytime they're ready to come in. So the question was, what was the commitment you made to yourself? And BG, I think you had the floor.
Yes, ma'am. I was saying I'm in my commitment in reading the workbook and purposing to be a lot of times people say be more intentional, but they really can't define what exactly that means. And
Mm.
for the longest time, I thought that I was being intentional. You know, I've learned to not canvas my emotions, not hide my feelings, not dance around the issues of other people's feelings. But then I realized that, in my in my quest to be more intentional, thinking that I had actually accomplished that, I really wasn't. And you find yourself in a
Oh
situation
no.
where, if there's something that challenges your intentionality, if that was your habit before, you kind of revert back to old habits, and you just kind of digress, and you end up subduing those intentionalities, those feelings. And
So
so,
let me ask you. I don't mean to
mhm.
cut you off, but I want to get this out. Have been doing more, or that just seemed to be happening more? Was it something that was emotionally, mentally, or physically since that commitment? Since you made that commitment?
Well, I would say honestly all of the above. um,
Oh, wow.
I deal with the biggest challenge that I have on a daily basis. Many people are not aware. Those who've met me in person know that I have a little limp. Okay, that's being modest. I have a waddle. um, the consequence of an accident from years ago, and it's something that it's not a process of healing. My
Right.
physical body, doctors have said, will never be 100%. I have limitations, and those limitations present personal challenges every day. Even the effort for me getting out
Well,
of
you know
bed.
what? We all have challenges. Some of us recognize them, some of us don't. The challenges are there. Some people have, look, I have a challenge trying to close my shades sometimes because my daughter flipped it all the way up. And then I have to call her and then she'll tell me, Ma, you're short. And that's all right because it'll be easier for me to hit the ground than it would be for her because she got a longer fall. That's a challenge for her.
Well,
So that's what I would have to say to her. So we all have challenges. Some I'm glad you did. She said she heard that. So some of us have challenges that we acknowledge, and some of us we're not there yet. I won't say that we don't, but we're not there yet. What about some of the rest of you? What was your commitment to yourself?
I mean, I can speak up if that's okay. Um,
Sure.
my commitment to myself for this week, and ongoing, is I have the tendency to I don't really pay close attention to politics itself. And the way I usually look
Mhm.
at things is I go to C-SPAN and I look just at the House floor. So I said I'm going to intentionally take an opportunity each day to go to an outlet that is actually talking more about the couple of laws that are being enacted. I just want to make sure that I'm a lot more aware of those things because those things could affect the community pretty quickly. And I want to make sure that I'm aligned and aware more of it because I'm a person who only watches television one day a week, and I don't, and it's not a
Oh,
TV with commercials. I only watch UFC, so I watch UFC one day a week, and so I don't follow mainstream news because there's a lot of fear tactics involved. But right now, there's some things that we really need to be made abreast of, and the only way I can be abreast of it is if I take an opportunity to find an outlet to be able to get all that information pretty quickly without the sensationalism of everyone putting their emotions into it. So that's my intentionality
I'm
for.
glad you mentioned that. No, I was saying I'm very happy that you said that you watch TV once a week and what you actually focus on. And because you have that one stream that you focus on, what would you say that you notice more in you watching, especially that floor when it became the politics? Did you have, was it more emotionally, mentally, physically?
It was definitely more. mentally. I don't usually have handle situations more emotional. I'm more of analytics. I analyze the situation, determine what's the best course of action. So it's usually limited emotions to things I'm normally doing, and especially I don't make any spur of the moment decisions. So at this point, I'm watching the situations unfold, but also making sure I strategically set a plan in action if they unfold one way or another. Chess, not checkers.
Hey, I love that. I love that. Does anybody else want to share? All right, we also have with us Tony, Mr. Tony Bunyan. He has joined us, and we have put the question on the floor, Mr. Bunyan. Was what was the commitment that you made to yourself? And that was from the assignment from last week.
One commitment that I made to myself a long time ago was to never give up. I mean, God has been so
Mm,
good to me and my family that even when things are bad or look bad from my perspective, I know it's going to work out for His glory. So I just learned to go through what I got to go through just to get to the other side of it. Because the key word is I'm going through it. We're not sitting in it. We still moving, and He's still moving. So long as you're going through it, then we know. And as my mom, my grandma would say, what doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And I truly believe that. So I just always committed to never giving up, regardless of what it looks like. Just never give up. Just keep going. And you move 1 feet. When you move 1 foot, the God gonna move two. So you take one step, God taking two. So I'm just always committed. And people always ask me, how I'm so positive because I know I lost my daughter when she was 6 months, and going through that
I'm
phase,
sorry.
I really learned that life is short, life is precious, and there's no age limit on it. So every day I'm on top of the soil,
Mm,
I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna do my best to pour into somebody and just live my life as long as I can because one day I too will be out of here. But until that day come, I'm gonna do my best just to live my life fullest and to always honor my daughter. So never giving up is something I live by, and I teach my kids and I teach everybody because you can be struggling one day and you can be living your best life the next day. That's how good God is. He take you from zero to a hero within a blink of an eye. So just never give up. That's my message to everybody.
So,
Keep going.
so would it be safe for me to say, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong sometimes. Would you say that it was safe to say it's more emotionally, mentally, or physically for you?
I think it's a combination. We are human, we are flesh, and we fall short every day. So some days it feel like it could be physical, but I understand that my spiritual connection is what keeps me going. Some people think that alarm clock is what's waking them up every day. It's not that alarm clock. It's some powerful than that alarm clock. Because I have the same alarm clock, and I put that same alarm clock in the cemetery. Ain't nobody getting up. So it's something deeper than that.
You're
So I
right
would
about
say it's
that.
a combination, but I think it's more my spiritual, which also because of my spiritual connection, it allows me to connect to myself, put myself first, which means I'm big in working out, I'm big in eating right. So because I can't do nothing for nobody, for my family, if I'm not together myself.
Amen. Amen.
Love that, Tony.
Does
Love that.
anyone? And he's right on point. If nobody else has to share, we have any listeners out there, we're not going to forget about you. If you've been walking this journey with us, we want to hear from you as well. So you can put it in the chat. We just for you because you had maybe have just purchased the book. We're on page 18, and I want to know what commitment did you make to yourself. Put it in the chat. Let us know. And then let us know what changes have you noticed in your emotional well-being since honoring that commitment to pause, to feel, or to heal. Dr. Stevens, we're honored to have you back with us tonight. As always, we're honored to have you here. As we reflect on the commitments that we made to ourselves from the workbook, many of which deal with permitting ourselves to feel, to heal, and to stop hiding behind survival. I would love your clinical insight on that.
Okay. And well, first, I want to say good evening to our panelists. I want to say good evening to everybody who is watching with us live, and those who will be coming on with us um, via watching the replay. And so, uh, Ms. Donna, can you repeat your question so I can make sure that I'm hitting on the right points here? Repeat that
So
question for me.
as we as the panelists and those viewers as well, as we reflect on the commitments that we made to ourselves, many of which deal with permitting ourselves to feel, to heal, and to stop hiding behind survival. I just want to know your clinical insight on that.
Okay, so to feel, to heal,
To
because you
heal
said
and to
you said
stop
some
hiding
really
behind ourselves.
and you said three really profound things. We could probably do a whole show just if we dedicated ourselves to focusing on each one of those things individually. So, as far as feeling, to feel that is going to come quite naturally because we are human beings, and so we're going to feel. Now, when we go over to heal, that is another step because we have to be able to identify what it is that we're
Mhm.
feeling. Sometimes people don't necessarily know what it is that they are feeling because they have spent so much time masking what they're feeling, not properly labeling feeling. When I use the term labeling, when I'm working with children in the public school system, I have an exercise that I call label those feelings. And I do that with children, and as adults, we need to do that as well. But I do that with children because with most children, they have not developed their emotional vocabulary. They don't know how to articulate what it is that they're feeling. So I ask them, label that feeling. I am now putting them in a place where they have to think about, okay, am I mad? Am I sad? Am I angry? Am I happy? And we really have to do the same thing for self. We have to be able to, one, label exactly what it is that we're feeling, because if we don't label our feelings, we're not able to articulate to other people what it is that we're feeling. We can um, demonstrate behaviors, that says to other people, "Oh, maybe she's mad." In reality,
Mhm.
maybe it's not that I'm really mad or angry. Maybe I'm frustrated or I'm
Mhm.
sad, but it looks like anger. So I would say, in terms of feeling, in order to heal, we need to first and foremost identify what that feeling is. And we do that by spending time with ourselves. When you ask the panel what did they work on, what was their emotional homework for the week, that was certainly mine, was to be more in tune with what it is that I'm feeling. And that requires sometimes taking a pause, allowing yourself to get quiet within your spirit so that you're able to identify what you're feeling. Once we're able to identify what we're feeling, then we can move on to healing. And then we have to give ourselves permission to feel what it is that we are feeling. Give yourself permission to be angry for a moment. Give yourself permission to be sad for a moment, because as I always say each and every show, it's okay to not be okay.
So, from your perspective as a mental health therapist, why is it so difficult for many of us, especially Black women, to give ourselves permission to pause and feel?
That's a very good question, Miss Black. And that's one of those questions that could definitely take up about two or three shows, if not one. But I'll try my best to put out an answer. And I want to say hello to the guests that are joining us on tonight. I'll try my best to give us somewhat of a condensed um, answer. So I'll have to answer it from a cultural perspective. And I happen to be a therapist that is culturally cognizant because the majority of the people that I work with are from the African American culture. But as a culture, when we start to examine the things, the disparities that we experience as a culture, as a people, and there are many. I oftentimes, when I'm asked to grace a platform and I talk about Black people in antiquity and our experience and what has happened to us, I like to talk about that subject because it explains where we are in the present. But due to some of the psychological disparities that we faced and are still facing, because there are many of those things that we had not properly identified and properly taken the time to heal from those things. Those disparities are things that constantly can cause us to suppress what it is that we are feeling. Let me try to make this a little bit more practical. You know, as human beings, we want to be, quote, good people. We want to be good people, especially if you're in the faith-based community. We want to be good people. We don't
Yeah.
want to talk about bad things, all of that. Okay, so we tend to not discuss or talk about traumatic things, and we use other kinds of language in order to cover those things up, and
Yeah, it's like a defense mechanism.
we do ourselves a disservice when we do that. And so one of the disservices that we do to ourselves is that when we suppress ourselves because we have been oppressed and suppressed, when we suppress ourselves, it causes us not to be able to deal with the reality of the problem or the situation. So I would say in a short answer, greatly due to many of the social disparities that as a culture that we faced in antiquity and many of the social disparities that we face now, those are things that add to reasons why we are oftentimes very, very suppressed people and don't give ourselves permission to have a voice and to talk about what it is that is going on with us, what has gone on with us, what is bothering us, what has bothered us, that we see in our family, because certainly we see whole generations of families who have made it a habit, which turned into a behavior of not talking about things. Where we, as a Black culture, we get the what's most famous saying. And if I started off, I guarantee that every person of color would be able to finish this sentence. What goes on in this house? And everybody would say, what would everybody say?
Stays.
Stays
Stays in
where?
his house.
We
Mhm.
all grew up with that, and I understand why our moms and grandmothers said that, because they wanted to be able to ensure a certain amount of privacy when it came to family. But that saying alone, rehearsed over many, many generations, has caused our culture and community a whole lot of damage, because there were traumatic things that took place in our houses that we did not talk about and we are still not talking about. But thank God for this platform, because now we have an opportunity to be able to talk about those things.
So we talked about the woman. What about the Black male, who sometimes it appears as though he's self-taught to suppress his emotions?
Well, I want to say this because I like to hear from our kings when it comes to that, because I wrote a book called I Am a Black Man. I wrote that book, which was one of my best selling books. I wrote that book because as a Black woman, so first I wrote I Am a Black Woman, and in the middle of publishing that book, Um, a lot of those women, when they talked about their disparities, there was always a central character in their story or their narrative, which was the man. And I thought, as a Black woman, I would like to hear from the Black man about their experiences. But this is what I said to the 8 co-authors who were all men ranging in ages. I said to them when they came on the project, I would like to hear from you as a Black man. I'd like to hear your experiences, your feelings, and this is a no judgment zone. I'd like to hear the
Exactly.
good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. And so to respond to what you're saying, and I'd certainly like to hear from our kings, I think that for Black men first and foremost, let's put this out here, they have a lot to say. Black men have a whole lot to say. They have a lot to say, like women have a lot to say. Unfortunately, sometimes, and I'll say more times than others, we as a society, we as women, do not create environments that are conducive for them to feel free to express how they feel without having the fear of judgment. And so sometimes they just don't say anything. And how that looks in our community and how that looks in our household is that grandpa or great grandpa, he was in the home, but he was emotionally unavailable.
Right.
Dad in the home, but he was a quiet figure. He was emotionally unavailable. We saw Dad there, but we never heard from Dad. Dad didn't really engage, but unfortunately, because Dad or Granddad or Great Grandpa felt suppressed, there were consequences of him being suppressed because he exhibited unhealthy behaviors in private in private because he was often suppressed by society, suppressed in his home, suppressed in his community. So that's my
Dr.
spirit,
Stephen,
my take on that, and I certainly would love to hear from our kings who are here
I
represented.
definitely hear from them. We have some people that are chiming in as well. We have Trevita who said that she definitely heard that growing up. And then we have Kiana who says that they fear of being judged and male bashing. So that's some of this. And I do hello to everyone here, Trevita, Dee Dee, and Kiana. Thank you so much for joining us. But yes, let's hear from the men. Do you feel as though that you suppress your emotions, that you're taught to suppress your emotions?
I'm gonna get
So of
I'm
course
gonna
it's
give
not right or
I'm
wrong.
gonna give the floor to Tony first.
Okay. Thank you, brother. Um, I would say it started from a childhood. I'm an '80s baby, and I grew up. I remember Dad saying, if I when I fell off my bicycle, get up, shake it off. Boys don't cry. I remember, hearing that several times. So even at a younger age, I was never taught that it's okay to cry about certain things. It's okay to express yourself as a man. I was taught to hold it in. And with my dad being in the house, I don't recall my dad saying, "I love you" verbally. I know he loved me because of
Mm,
things he did,
wow.
but I don't recall him, hugging me or telling me, "Son, I love you." We know our dad loves us because he's paying the bills, he's buying the food, he's taking care of his, his responsibility. But we have to also remember that, for example, my dad lost his dad at a young age. So my dad lost his dad at 9 years old. So my dad had to learn how to be a father. He never, it's something like there's no book for it. So he did the best he could with what he knew. And I took the good things from what he did and I kind of used that in my life. But so now I tell my son, it's okay to express yourself as a young man. It's okay to cry if you need to. We can't cry about everything. That's not what us men do. But it's okay to express yourself. So I'm still learning how to be the best dad I can. It's a process. I'm learning how to be a man. It's some things I did not learn. But expressing ourselves is something. It's a learned behavior because for most of us, it's not taught. Especially coming up, in the hood, in the projects, you got to be tough. You know what I mean? You can't be soft. And for some reason, in the Black community, expressing yourself as a man is looked at as being a soft version. And nowadays you have to be real cognizant of being emotional because of the world is trying to take our masculinity away. The world is trying to demasculate us men, but the Bible says God created man, then woman, so we are important, and the world is trying to take that away from us. So us men have to stand up and take our appropriate position, which is the head of the household.
Back.
Just
Yes.
we are first, and when you are first, there's a responsibility that comes with being first, because somebody somewhere is watching you and learning from you, because we are first. So it is
Love
a
it.
learned behavior. It is something that we got to constantly work on. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to. It might take years for us to, as a black culture, especially as a black man, to get to the point where we can say, "Hey man, I love you. Hey man, keep up the good work." And that's something I do all the time with my friends. Some of them are great husbands. I tell them, "Hey, keep up the good work." And it's surprising that they don't hear it enough. I might be in the store, see a random black man or a random man, period, with his kids, and I say, "Hey, keep up the good work. I see you." And you should see the smile on their face. You should see, "Hey man, thank you. I appreciate that." Because that's not something we do as men. We gotta learn how to encourage each other a lot more than better, rather than tearing each other down. So, Brother Howell, please add anything to that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I'm gonna just chime in before BG does. I heard that growing up, that you don't cry, but the thing about it was, it was told to me. I grew up with the five brothers, and they would tell me, "You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to cry." So I grew up saying that I'm not supposed to cry. I'm supposed to tough it out.
Hmm.
But I'm looking at them like, I'm your sister. I'm not your brother. But that's just the way that I am now. You just don't cry for whatever it is. You don't cry. So when I take pain and things just don't bother me, and I said, it's because they always told me you just don't cry. I never knew why they say you don't cry, and especially me being their sister, you're telling me not to cry. And I bet you boo-hoo it in the bathroom or something, but they told me not to cry. Go ahead, BG.
Well, it's an interesting dynamic because I, well, however you look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have much recollection of my past. My father, he passed away several years ago, and I think the best example that I've gotten scripturally, as Mr. Tony was saying, the Bible teaches us, our responsibility. And I'm very, very intentional about my responsibility as the man, quote unquote, head of household. Um, I'm very, very adamant about the fact that, like me or dislike me, I really don't care. But respect me, I give you a choice. By the same token, that demands that I also respect the next man.
Yeah.
I'm not really, I look at all men as the same. There are struggles that we as black men endure. A lot of it at the hands of other races. But I'm one who I would much rather take on the responsibility of myself than try to blame or point fingers at someone else. You know, the the ideology. I think probably the two best books I read or have read, the Bible, and I have repeated this before. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and those two books have given me a unique perspective on the male psyche. Uh, I
Wow.
do a lot of research. I'm a weekly columnist for the newspaper back home in Georgia, but I do a lot of research. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is you educate yourself, improve your knowledge. And when it comes to men and the dynamic of our position in the world, the ugly truth of the matter is we're the low man on the totem pole. You know,
Well, we're
this
right there with you. We're right
this
there on that
world
totem pole, right along with.
my wife and I were watching a documentary earlier today, and it talked about how um, the black heritage has literally been stolen. If you look at every major continent in this world, on every major continent, indigenous people were black. They educate us and tell us that we were brought over here on slave ships. No, there were not that many slave ships that brought that many people. The indigenous people in this country were black. Um, it's just something that been it's a misnomer. We've been miseducated, and like I said, our heritage has been stolen. Um,
Those
I'm
are the
not
things that you need to be teaching, or the teachers need to be teaching our children that's in school, that's hearing different stories. And most of those history books have been tainted, that they want us to know but so much, but not enough about our own culture. And then that comes from us, where we have to continue to educate our own, because nobody else is going to do that. So they're
no,
limiting things that's in the schools now. So I get that, and I applaud you for saying that. We have Dee Dee, who says, "Thank you for this conversation. It's a conversation we definitely need to have as a person." We have Kiana saying, "Our older generation were children, then parents. Our generations are now adults having children." Travita chimes in and says that it's the same thing for her. She has five brothers, five boys, and that's exactly what they said. So, for those who, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Stevens, and for you gentlemen for chiming in. For those listening who are just beginning to make space for healing, and who might feel uncomfortable sitting in stillness or confronting their emotions, I want you to come up with yourself, because I'm going to ask you next week, what's one practical step or daily practice that you recommend to yourself to start honoring a commitment, a real life commitment for you? Because today's focus, we're challenging ourselves to create an acronym using our own words or quotes, something that gives new meaning to a term that reflects being broken or wounded. The goal is to reclaim and infuse that word with power, intention, and healing. And that's the word that I chose. I chose healing, and I broke it down as an acronym: healing, life, invigorating, and nourishing, along with glorify. So I chose that as my acronym, because healing isn't just about recovery, it's about transformation. I chose words that reflect the absence of pain and the presence of renewal. Each word in the acronym speaks of the strength and the grace that can come from even our worst wounded pieces. So now I'd like to turn it over to you to tell me what are some of the acronyms that you guys came up with.
I'll take it if that's okay. So I'll
Yes?
say I came up with FADAR. And this is something that I also included in my course, that when things are, because what we, a lot of times when we are dealing with pain and dealing with things that are going on in our lives, we we constantly are reliving them on an everyday basis. And
Mhm.
when you relive them, they're new. They're not as if they've happened. Is that they're continually happening. So this is something that I used when I first was making the decision that I was going to forgive situations in my life and allow myself to continually move forward. And what I use is FADA. When something comes up and I become aware of it, focus that it happened, acknowledge that it has happened, debunk that it has any relevance on my current situation, elevate above it, and reclaim myself in those moments. So that is what I call FADAR. And that allows me to, as those things were coming to me, acknowledge that they happened. I don't want to tell myself something didn't happen. We want to always grow from situations, good, bad, or indifferent. So, so I utilize that as a way to acknowledge that yes, something in my past has hurt me, but it does not, it will not continually hurt. It has no relevance on my current life or my future self. My self worth is not tied into whatever took place. So I utilize that acronym to come back and reclaim my power in every situation, and then that allows me to elevate above it and say to myself, "It happened. I survived it. Now let's thrive." And that's what I put in my forged in fire. Exactly, because that everything, everyone goes through something in their life, and being able to go through it, get past it, tell that story without reliving it. Because when I tell the stories in my book, I didn't relive those moments. I was so far away from that person. I've grown so much in the 25 years or 30 years from the activities that happened in that book. And I was more proud of myself that I didn't digress on writing it. I was still empowered.
So coming up acronym and understanding your acronym as far as who you are. Is there anybody else that want to share what their acronym is?
The one that I the hurt, HURT, harboring harboring unresolved or unaddressed relationship traumas.
Okay.
And obviously, to hold on to something like that, it can stagnate any phase of growth in your life. So, like anything else, as Dr. Carolyn was saying earlier, if you don't address it, you don't deal with it, then you can't get over it. And in order to address the concerns, those hurts, you have to address those, deal with those, and overcome those to be able to even continue on in life.
It's so important in this season, and us as a black culture must now share with our sons that it is okay to feel, and with feeling comes healing. If we don't start now sharing that with them, we will be responsible for the consequences they will face. Yes, yes. She says our generations now are babies, having babies. Yes, they are. I see it all the time. But we must not be silent in that in this issue. And I get that. You just see that their babies having babies. And this is why I say sometimes traditional grandparents. To me, a traditional grandparent right now in this age would at least be 40 years old. I can't see somebody being 30 years old being a grandparent. I understand that happened hundreds of years ago, but things are different. Things are definitely different. Now, I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Stevens. Dr. Stevens, as we explore this idea of reclaiming brokenness through words, using acronyms like healing, new meaning to pain, what are your thoughts on the power of language in the healing process?
My thoughts on the power of language. That is, that component is very important when we talk about the process of healing. The work that I do is focused on language. It is me listening to what people have to say and helping them to develop what emotional language, and in turn me being able to respond back to what they have said to me. So the component of language is going to be most integral when it comes to healing. When you think about us as a diaspora, one of the first things that happened to us is that we our language was stolen. The ability for us to speak, first of all, in our native tongue, that was stolen when we migrated and came here to America. But those things were snatched. When we talk about signs of trauma or things that contribute to people being suppressed, trauma is one of them. And one of those causes is when you put people in an unfamiliar environment and you take them out of their natural habitat. That is that causes people to be suppressed. You can think in this way. If you go to a new place where you've never been, for just a moment or two, you're going to feel a bit apprehensive about speaking or communicating in that environment or in that building or that event. You may have to warm up to it before you start feeling free enough to be able to communicate. So if we take that same concept and we magnify that over a period of 450 years, for some people, I agree with my brother, BG, because all of us, that wasn't all of our experience as indigenous people. A great majority of us, that we were snatched out of our natural habitat, and we were brought to an unfamiliar territory where we heard people talking in a language that we did not understand, and that hindered us from being able to communicate with them, and they certainly could not communicate, you know, positively anyway with us. So, language can be a barrier to healing when you don't understand what a person is saying emotionally. That is the reason why a part of our journey of healing is to be able to develop your emotional vocabulary. And I'd like for everybody to remember that on the panel and those that are viewing. What does your emotional vocabulary look like? If you say, oh, my children don't understand me, my husband doesn't understand me, my partner doesn't understand me, but could it be that they don't understand you not because they don't want to understand you, but it be that they don't understand your language, what you're speaking? So that's why it's important to be able to develop your emotional vocabulary, to be able to have conversations where you say, okay, when I say this is what I mean. When I said that, that is what I meant. Because when we don't do that, then there's a lot in communication that can become very muffled. Okay, so language is a very important key when it comes to healing. And I'll say this one is important, and I'll step back. Um, when our ancestors were on those slave ships, one of the things, and we've seen this in movies, but one of the things that they did was that many of them thought about, okay, there are other people here that understand my tongue, that understand my native language. So let me get together with those people who understand my language so that we can form a sense of community, even though we're in a traumatic situation. But the point here is that they knew that it was going to be detrimental to their survival on those ships, on for their survival for wherever it is that they were going. They knew it was very important that they form some level of a communication system. I say that to all of us listening here tonight, is that, for the most part, most of us that are here tonight, we speak the English language, but I'm not talking about the English language. I am mainly referring to our emotional language, that we have to be more intentional, as Coach Rachel would say. We have to be more intentional about one, developing our emotional vocabulary, two, developing that emotional vocabulary to the point that the community that you work in, that you navigate in, that you're a part of, that they understand what it is that you're communicating when you say these things or do these things. This is what I mean when I say it, because there's so much that gets lost in communication. So yes, language by far is one of the most important pieces of the healing process.
BG had brought up, us coming over on ships and who wasn't really on those ships and how they had taken advantage of us, because we all have a purpose here on earth. But purpose isn't just about what we do, it's about how we show up in the world, even when we are broken or healed. So I want to ask you a question. What does, and I want each one of you to think about it, what does it truly mean to walk in your purpose, especially amid pain, transition, or transformation? What does it truly mean to walk in your purpose? Or do you even know what your purpose is, especially when you're going through pain, transition, or transformation?
I like to answer.
Yes, please do.
First of all, I want to ask you all for to forgive me for my tardiness coming in. I had some other issues that came up, and then I had a little power outage and tried to get in on my mobile phone, and I think I did more
We're here
noise.
now, sister.
Okay,
We're
thank you.
here now, so it's okay.
Listen, so I do understand my purpose now. I've heard such wonderful things tonight, but I understand that my purpose has uh, a minimal amount of what I do and a maximum amount of who I am. I was not created as just a one dimensional being. I am a triune being. I am a body, a spirit, and a soul. Yes, my emotions are in a part of this beautiful makeup called Bobby. And so, as I tried to find the functioning through the trauma of a whole lot of stuff, it was the healing process that I heard somebody said. I think it was Rachel that says, "Yeah, I need to acknowledge this thing. I'm not gonna, forever keep it silent." And giving voice means that we have to get a voice. And so I give all honor to the person who formed me in my mother's womb. He created me with my
Mm,
own voice, and he didn't tell me to be like my mama. Now I heard I should be like my mama or my daddy, because you got those physical traits. But I heard a secret, and that is that no matter what my parents are like, no matter what my community's like, no matter what my race is like, I am not a duplicate of anything. I'm not a duplicate. But
amen.
when
Amen.
I tried to form myself in the system, even of family, I'm trying to create my identity and purpose in the system of my family. It was a failure. It produced it self-inflicted wounds. So I'm already dealing with trauma. Now I'm adding and compounding self-inflicted trauma. So during my transition, what I learned for my healing was, yeah, I'm gonna tell what happened to me. I'm gonna tell it. I'm not gonna say I dreamed it. No, it didn't happen. Or look, worry about how it gonna make somebody else feel somewhere down the line. I had a tragic thing happen where I tried to talk about something that happened to me in a setting with people I thought would be like, yeah, you know what, that's true, and they were the main ones saying, no, you got that wrong. Or if you tell that, you're gonna cause a bigger problem. And
Exactly.
that's in my
Exactly.
own race. That's in my own family.
We have
Okay, that's in my
we
own.
have people telling you
Mhm.
now, they're
Yep.
agreeing with you. They
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, but the healing part,
It,
like you're saying to me, is I focus less on my purpose and more on my identity. And I find that they're connected. So that's why I'm even here on Basic Black After Dark. Because the more I became me, the more opportunities opened up and chance and listen, things that I didn't orchestrate manifested because I'm being me. Not that I'm doing something. I'm being me. And I
That's
appreciate
right.
all of
me
that
somebody else, because there's only one you, and we
Right.
love you. love you for that, for being just you and not trying to be a duplicate of anyone. And I appreciate that on this panel tonight. And if nobody else has anything to share, I have, before we wrap up the segment, I want to check in. Has anyone completed the quotes that on page 21 in the workbook? This section invites us to reflect on the words that speak life into our journey. And those quotes inspire, they uplift, or they ground us in truth. Some people may have gotten something outside of it, but if you completed it, what quote resonates with you the most? And where are you in your healing or growth process? So when you read those quotes, what quote resonated with you the most? And as you figure that out, where were you in your healing process? They're shouting out to you. Bobby saying, well done, well done. Yes, Queen, well done. Someone also mentioned that something about therapy. You can reach out to Dr. Carolyn Stevens if you or someone you know may need therapy. We'll make sure you get that information. So if I don't hear from anybody, that means you're going to have an extra assignment. All right, now I'm going to move it on because we got to be wrapping this up. And this goes to our listeners and our viewers too. If you've been following along with us in Cracks in the Surface, Strengths in the Core, we want to hear from you too. So I'm going to give you next week. I'm going to give you all that grace. I'm going to give both of you, our panel and our listeners.
All right.
Look at page 21, see which one resonates with you the most, and then let me know where you're at in your healing or growth process. You can drop it in the comments, you can share it in live chat, or you can post it using the hashtag not easily broken to uplift one another with words that heal and empower. So, as we prepare for our next panel, we'll explore healing and the real you. And what you're gonna do, you're gonna go to page 22 and 23 of the workbook. Now, because you didn't get this assignment this week, now you got 21, 22, and 23
Yes,
to
ma'am.
do. So I did it. I did it. Mine is here. So I don't want to hear nobody say you didn't do yours. I did mine. It's right here in this book. I make sure I do it.
I
See, mine is right here. I got mine done. I'm gonna close it because I don't want nobody to copy it. But I
Uh-uh.
got mine done. I got mine done. I do that work. And I'm not saying that you don't because I know everybody has a very busy life. But before we meet again, I want to leave you with this reflection. What's one small thing you can do this week to create space for your healing? It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be intentional. Also, I want you guys to begin on working on your personal reference guide on page 34. This guide will become a powerful tool for you. It's going to go with you as you continue to this journey. It's going to be something that you can return to when life gets loud and you need to reconnect your truth. It's really resources that's within your community. Some of them you may not even have known that's there. Some of them you may have thought wasn't for you. Oh, that's not me. That's for somebody else. I don't need that. That's for these type of people. We are those type of people.
We are.
We deal with pain. We deal with hurt. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking forward to next week. Well, no, I take that back. The next time we meet, and that's going to be June the 6th, we will meet. I want to thank you, Dr. Carolyn Stevens, for sharing your wisdom, of course, always, your
Mhm.
presence and truth in us tonight. Your voice continues to be a guiding light in this series, and I thank you so much. And I thank you to our amazing panelists who didn't do the work. Yep, I know who you are. And every listener and viewer who showed up for themselves by being here tonight. We'll see you next time on Friday, June 6th. I have two special guests. They're authors, Farron McLemore and Natalie Murphy. Now, don't forget to do your work, as we'll be back with our wonderful panel on June 20th as we explore cracks in the surface and strengths in the core not easily broken. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful night. For those of you who are listening, get the book. If you want to read it, want to join us, get the book. We have a lot of fun with it. We do a lot of talk, but we get a lot out of it. And we share so much. Because what you may be holding in on the inside, somebody else might be dealing with it as well. So, once again, good night, everybody. Have a great weekend.